Good evening. My name is Bob Saar, and welcome to the Madison Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum. This event is an opportunity to learn more about the candidates running for District 8, State Senate, and State Representative. We appreciate each person's attendance here this evening, and also welcome our KJAM listeners. A special thank you to KJAM for broadcasting this event, and to our candidates who are here this evening, so that we may be more informed voters on November 6th. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the Madison Chamber of Commerce Governmental Affairs Committee. I would personally like to thank the committee members, John Knus, State's Attorney Ken Meyer, Elisa Sands, Chris Larson, and Donna Fawbush, along with our Chamber Executive Director, Rosie Jameson, for all their efforts in putting the forum together. Thank you. We are fortunate to hold this forum here at Dakota State University tonight. I am calling upon Jesse Kane, Vice President of Student Affairs, for a brief comment on behalf of DSU. Jesse?
Good evening, everyone. My comments will be brief. I get to sit out there with you all, so I don't have the pressure of sitting up here. But welcome to Dakota State University. We're happy to have you here. We want to thank the Madison Chamber of Commerce's Governmental Affairs Committee for considering Dakota State University for this event. On behalf of our president, Dr. David Borowski, who could not be here tonight, he's away doing some things on behalf of the university, but he wanted me to express his regret for not being a part of this event. One of the things we wanted to say about the significance of this event being at Dakota State University is that civic engagement is a very important lesson for students, and that an event such as this in no other way can give really the importance of what civic engagement is by being a part of the political process. And so we congratulate each of the candidates here who are stepping forward to really serve District 8, and we wish you well in this particular process as well as a week from now. So thank you again and welcome to Dakota State University.
Thank you, Jesse, and thanks to DSU and President Borowski for hosting the forum on campus. Now a little bit about tonight's forum and its format. The forum for tonight's forum is as follows. 2 candidates are running for Senate. Senator Russell Olson and Charlie Johnson, and you may vote for one of them. 4 candidates are running for House. Scott Parsley, Roy Lindsey, Gene Kroger, Leslie Hindman, and you may vote for up to 2 of them. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves, explain their qualifications, and summarize what issues are important to them. Questions asked of the candidates tonight have not been released to the candidates prior to the forum. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer each question asked. 1 question will be asked by the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee. 1 question will be asked by a representative of the DSU Student Senate on behalf of the DSU students. We will then ask the audience for any questions. If necessary, I'll repeat or summarize the question for all to hear, and the candidates will have up to 1 minute to respond to those questions. At the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will be given 1 minute for final comments to summarize their candidacy. The candidate who appears first on the ballot will begin the introduction section, followed by the other candidates in the order in which they appear on the ballot. We will then alternate with each question, so each candidate will have an opportunity to speak first. I'd just like to ask the audience to please hold your applause during the forum until the end to allow for more time to hear the candidates stand on the respective issues. Our timekeeper, State's Attorney Ken Meyer, who's sitting here in the front row, will hold up cue cards to help candidates keep track of time allotments. The cards will indicate when 30 seconds remain and when time has expired. If a candidate continues to speak after the stop card has been shown, I will step beside the candidate indicating that their time is up. Candidates, are we ready? Yes, all right. Ready or not, here we go. Great. We all look forward to an interesting and informative evening. So here are the candidates for District 8. Charles Johnson is first on the ballot, so he will be the first to speak, followed by Senator Russell Olson, Scott Parsley, Roy Lindsey, Gene Kroger, and then Leslie Hindman. And again, each candidate will have 2 minutes for an introduction. So Charlie, if you'd like to step forward to the podium and please make your 2-minute introductory statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Madison Chamber of Commerce, Dakota State University, and also to the listening audience on KJM Radio. I'm a lifelong resident of Lake County. I grew up in Orland Township, attended Madison High School, graduated from there, attended Dakota State University, graduated from there also, had an acceptance to law school at USD, turned that down and became a small farm advocate. After that short stint, and following the stroke of my father, along with my younger brother and I, we took over the family farm, and we've been farming in Orland Township ever since then. I served on the Lake County Commission from 1987 to 1995. I've been involved, going back to my school years, in local government, student government at Madison High School, and also at Dakota State University. The 3 major issues that I believe that we should address in this campaign is better education for all ages, improvements in our infrastructure, and better opportunities for our youth. I hope that our questions and comments tonight can address some or all of these issues, and I'd be willing to visit with you and give you my viewpoints on those issues tonight. So again, thank you, and I look forward to your questions coming up.
Thank you, Charlie. Next up will be Senator Russ Olson. Senator?
Thanks, Bob, and welcome everyone tonight. I'd like to also thank Rosie and the Chamber Government Affairs Committee for putting this together tonight. I want to most importantly thank everybody that's out here tonight to listen to your candidates. I've had the pleasure of serving in the South Dakota Legislature for the last 6 years. And my wife Jenny is here tonight, and we didn't really realize how quaint the room would be, and probably with Gordon, if he would be here tonight, or a 3-year-old, it might not be quite this quiet. So, you know, that's the reason I run those, for our families and for our children. And the reason that I've served in the South Dakota Legislature is to hopefully leave South Dakota in a little better spot than it was when I got there. We've dealt with, in my duration of the service, we've dealt with stimulus funding, we've dealt with budget cuts, and we've dealt with what I say is we've righted the ship, and we have put our state in a position that many other states across our country are envious of. We have the position right now where we can start to reinvest in the programs and make South Dakota a better place for all of us. You'll see that in the newspapers and on the radio, a lot of controversy in Pierre has happened over the last couple of years, but you'll also notice that that didn't happen in the Senate. And I'm proud to say that my colleagues elected me to be the majority leader because they thought that I had the firm head on my shoulders to run our Senate, and I ran that the same way that I hopefully served this district, with respect, integrity, and honor. I look forward to answering any questions that you have.
Thank you, Senator Olson. Next up will be the candidates for District 8 House of Representatives, starting with Scott Parsley. Scott?
Thank you, Bob. Thank you to the Chamber and to the Chamber Government Affairs Committee and to Dakota State University for hosting this tonight. We really appreciate this opportunity. This is our 3rd opportunity to come before the voters to talk about our positions and why we're running. As Bob said, my name is Scott Parsley. I've lived in Madison for a little over 30 years now. Married to my wife Val, who's up in the back there. We've raised 3 kids in this community, and our youngest will be graduating from high school this spring from Madison Central, and we're looking forward to that with some mixed emotions. She's going to be our last, and we'll be empty nesters. So, why am I qualified to run for this office? First of all, I'm a citizen of South Dakota, and that's what one of the main things you need to be to run for this office, for any public office. But I think it's important that we look at these public office opportunities and go into them with the desire to serve. Not to go to grind an axe or to go to work on a pet project, but a desire to serve the people of South Dakota. We have a great state. This state is a place I enjoy living. I grew up here. I love this state. But we have some challenges in front of us. We're not funding our education system the way we should be funding our education. We're not providing the resources that we need to take care of our elderly and our low income in this state. We're looking at economic development activities. We need to spend more time looking at what can we grow from within the state. And I use ethanol as an example of that. That's an industry that we grew from within the state. We kept those resources here, and we were able to improve the economy on a wide basis through that industrial development. Those are the types of things I want to work on. I look forward to working across the aisle with both parties, with the governor, so that we can move our state forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next, we'll hear from Roy Lindsey, candidate for House in District 8. Roy?
Thanks, Bob. And I too would like to thank everyone who put this together this evening. My wife Kathy and I have lived in Madison since 1978. We've raised 8 children here. I've been a businessman for 41 years. We have cropland in Moody and Lake counties, and I have restaurants in Madison and Del Rapids. And I also have a laundromat in Del Rapids. I also taught for 33 years at Madison High School. And I taught vocational courses, and I saw where vocational courses and that really did help a number of students who are not college bound. And so one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is addressing some of the issues that have been shortcomings in education funding. There's funding that's out there. We may need to look at changing some of the state's priorities. Another thing is we do have an elderly family member in the nursing home. And she is still private pay, and we have seen her private pay costs go up because of the funding cuts and that have happened at the state level on the Medicaid side. So those are some areas in that concern me, and I would like to have the opportunity to see what I can do to help the state either work with the priorities that we have and redirect some of them, or I'm also interested in economic development. Madison has a lot to offer. So does the entire state of South Dakota. And so if we can capitalize on the infrastructure, the education, the recreation we have to offer, and show how nice it is to other people and other businesses, I'd like to see South Dakota grow. So I'm Roy Lindsey, and I'd like to be a representative for District 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Next up will be Gene Kroger, candidate for House in District 8. Gene?
Thank you, Bob. Thank you to the Chamber and for all of you for being here tonight. I'm Gene Kroger, and I'm a native of South Dakota, born and raised here. I can't claim as much longevity in Madison as others. We lived on the west side of Lake Herman for nearly the last 10 years, and I chose to retire here. I'm not exactly a stranger to this area. The property I lived on, I walked across over 60 years ago as part of a requirement for a Boy Scout 14-mile hike to earn a merit badge. I should have bought some more of it then. I attended the University of South Dakota and graduated with a degree in geology. While in college, got married to my wife Barbara. We've been married for 56 years. I have 2 sons and 4 grandchildren. After college in the military, I spent 22 years in business and owning my own business. Then at the age of 45, I answered a call to ministry and went to seminary. And in my varied career, I was a United Methodist pastor for 17 years and a United Methodist district superintendent for 4 years. I have spent my life in a wide variety of fields. I've lived a lot of places. I haven't been to every state. I've been to 47 of them. And I'll just conclude that this is the best one to live in, without even visiting the other 3. Every issue that concerns the voters of District 8 is an issue that is important to me, and every issue that concerns us in South Dakota is important to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Next will be the last candidate for District 8 House, Leslie Hindman. Leslie?
Thank you, Bob. Thank you to the Chamber, DSU, and all those here that have come tonight. My name is Dr. Leslie Hindman. My friends call me Les. I was born and raised the last of 7 children on a farm in northern Moody County. I've lived here all my life, aside from going to dental school for 4 years in Chicago. My wife, Libby, the audience here, and I've been married for 36 years. We have 4 children and 4 grandchildren. The question comes up, why do you want to run for office? I've always had an interest in politics. I've led a community drive to build a common library, the city, county, and school combined, and I've worked in leadership positions in the State Dental Association. I have experience in both operating a small business and in farming. I have dental offices in Flandreau and Del Rapids, so I'm faced with the daily decisions in not only patient care, but also staffing, payroll, professional liability, and working with the complexities of insurance. Thus, I feel I'm well prepared to handle the difficult decisions that will need to be made at the state level. I have a good perspective of what the state's largest industry is facing in feeding the hungry of the world. And I hope to bring my farming experience to the table when discussing statewide economic development. I'm also a Medicaid provider. Certainly economic development and education are on the forefront, and to keep this state headed in the right direction. I would be a strong voice because of my experience in not only operating a small business and farming, but also in other regulations as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Now we'll go to the question and answer portion of the forum. And for the first question, we'll turn to John Canuce, who is the chairman of the Chamber Government Affairs Committee, to ask the first question. John?
Thank you, Bob. The question coming from our committee is, protecting our interest at DSU is important. If you go to Peer, what would you do to effectively protect the interests of DSU and its impact upon Madison's economy?
Thank you, John. In the order that we'll go on for this question will be Senator Olson, Scott Parsley, Roy Lindsey, Gene Kroger, Leslie Hindman, and Charlie Johnson. So Senator Olson. Yes, and you each have 1 minute to answer the question.
Thanks for the question, John. The question of what I would do to protect DSU's interest in Peer is one that I can say that I've already been doing. You know, the first couple of years that I was in the legislature, every year there was a bill from somebody to close DSU, to try to save money. And quite frankly, you haven't heard much about that in the last few years, and I'd like to say it's because of the leadership position that I'm in. I'm also working with General Reich right now to expand and enhance the mission of our National Guard here that actually is adjoined to our campus. And I'm working on a plan. We have a great economic development opportunity in Madison right now with the new hospital being built. And there's a big chunk of property right next to DSU that I'm going to work for the university to try to acquire.
Thank you, Senator. Next up will be Scott Parsley.
Thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. Dakota State University is a jewel in our crown here in Madison and in District 8, and it's very important to this community. One of the great things that I've seen from Dakota State University is the new innovation that we've had. When I think about the security and banking activities that were created here in this campus and now have gone on to become a major business in the community and have had an impact worldwide in our banking security systems today that we depend on because of the terrorism and things that happen in the country. One of the things that I've been involved with is the South Dakota Innovation Fund, which takes ideas like the banking security system and helps those who create those ideas move them into the marketplace. There are a group in South Dakota that have made an investment in that venture capital fund, and we need to bring those types of things to campuses like DSU to make sure that those great ideas that are created on the campus get out into the marketplace and can grow our economy.
Thank you, Scott. Next up will be House candidate Roy Lindsey. Roy?
DSU is a fantastic addition to the city of Madison, but also to the state of South Dakota. We saw that when it changed its mission when Citibank came in, and it changed its mission into computers, and computers have done nothing but expand and expand and expand. One of the things that I would like to see, and that is that not only are we teaching our youth that are coming through, but there's a lot of jobs out there, and there's a lot of unemployed people out there that I would like to see have an opportunity to also spend time at DSU upgrading their skills and becoming employable in higher paying jobs that are in the computer industry. So DSU is definitely a staple in the city of Madison and the state of South Dakota.
Thank you, Roy. Next up will be House candidate Gene Kroger. Gene?
I think every university in our system has its importance, and the importance of Dakota State is certainly well known here, and it's a unique position that you occupy. The particular things that are going to come up, not having served in the legislature, I probably won't know about until they come up. But I think your interests have been well protected, and they will continue to be, and that would be my intention. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Next up will be House candidate Leslie Hindman.
Certainly DSU, I believe, has found a niche that they've been able to provide to the communities in the surrounding area that has actually excelled them to the national level and the national spotlight. There are recruits from here, graduates from here that I have personally talked to that have went nationwide with their job search and been able to find work in that particular area. And I think I would be very interested in providing that opportunity as your representative to continue that process and help DSU to reach what they would like to do, and that be continue on the national level.
Thank you, Les. And the last one we'll hear from on this question is State Senate candidate Charlie Johnson. Charlie?
Well, I spent 5 years on this campus and graduated in 1980 and was involved with student government. And at that time, we were under a direct threat to be closed at any time. And our student federation and student council worked hard to maintain the college here in Madison. If we're to keep this college open, I think the focus has to be on the students themselves. And the ever-escalating rise in tuition costs has got to be stopped. We've got to make college education a lot more affordable for our young people in the state. We're not going to be able to maintain this university if we don't have an enrollment in a student population that can afford to come here in the first place. And we need to pay our instructors and teachers a lot better too. So if we really want to put DSU on the map and take care of it and save it, we've got to come up with more dollars for higher education in the state, period.
Thank you, Charlie. The next question will come from the DSU Senate. And I'd ask our young senator here to please identify himself and proceed with the question. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elliot Brooklyn. I am the Student Association Senate President for Dakota State University. The question asked of the candidates on behalf of the students of Dakota State is this. Average student debt is growing at an alarming pace. In addition, South Dakota is the only state that does not have a need-based aid program. If elected, what will you do to help keep the cost of higher education down, as well as provide support for low-income families to afford a college education?
Thank you, Elliot. We appreciate the question on behalf of the DSU Senate. And for this round of questions, we'll start with Scott Parsley, candidate for the House. Scott?
Thank you for that question, Elliot. Having had 2 kids in college and one about to go, I painfully understand the challenges that you're talking about. I think one of the things that we need to do is what I talked about earlier, and that is to help our university systems. We have many, many things that are researched and developed in our university systems that never become commercial. If those things are developed in our university systems and they become commercial, the universities get part of that royalty from those sales of those products. That's one way we can help keep our costs down to students and bring in some industry to help pay for it. The state has a role as well, and we need to continue to search for ways in state government to provide more assistance to higher education, to lessen the burden on the students. And as you say, a needs-based program needs to be investigated so that students who have financial need can attend university and can then again contribute to society, contribute to the economy with better paying jobs as they graduate.
Thanks, Scott. Next up, we'll hear from House candidate Roy Lindsey. Roy?
My wife and I have put 6 kids through college so far, and we have 2 that are in college now. So I understand the question. From the state standpoint, we have a lot of funds that are in trust funds. I'm not sure what the possibilities are, but there may be possibilities in that where students could get very low interest loans from the trust funds and then pay them back to the state that direction. The other thing is that we already do need to add funding to education. And if we can increase funding to education and keep students' costs down, that would help as well. At the moment, I don't have an answer for grants from the state level. So with that in mind, I would definitely look into it, but I can't see that I can answer your question 100% at this time.
Thanks, Roy. Next up will be House candidate Gene Kroger. Gene?
That's an excellent question, but a tough one. And there are no simple solutions. There are intelligent choices. You know, the cost of education continues to go up. And most students, for example, our cost of education is lower in South Dakota. And our students come out with a lower student debt than they do in other states. But it's still an important issue. And I think a lot is being done to fund higher education, but there are always more demands for funds than there are funds. And you know, it just has to be one of those things that everybody has to decide if this is what I want to do, and do I want to pay the price to do it.
Thank you, Gene. Next up will be House candidate Leslie Hindman. Les?
Yes, being part of the student government and part of DSU, you're very aware of that question. I would like to expand on the opportunity scholarships, which I think came about the last 2 years of my youngest daughter's college education. I think that's an excellent opportunity for those students that are needs-based in particular to be able to get that kind of aid. We also found that if students are really interested in trying to go after the grants and the scholarships, that there are many people out there that are looking for students that would fit into their categories. The amount of aid that has been given out in our school in Flanders alone from 30 years that I've been there has increased dramatically. There are a lot of people that want to give to those kind of sources. Certainly, the needs-based process is something we need to look into.
Thank you, Les. Next, we'll hear from the candidates for South Dakota State Senate, starting with Charlie Johnson. Charlie.
Well, several other candidates have mentioned 3 sons and several years of college education, a few degrees later, and one doing master's work. We mortgage the farm. For those people that don't have that option, it leaves you in kind of a dire strait. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we as a state need to make tuition costs more affordable for students. We can't handle what's going on a federal level in terms of Pell Grants and student loans. That's a federal issue. 30 years ago, I graduated from college, and I graduated without any student debt. Flash forward to today, most every student graduates with burdensome debt, and debt that in some cases they can't even handle anymore. And so we need to get back to more of an equilibrium where we as a state are willing to invest in our youth, invest in our higher education, and bring more dollars back to students in the terms of lower tuition costs.
Thank you, Charlie. Finally, we'll hear from Senator Russell Olson, State Senate candidate. Russ.
Thanks for the excellent question. The entire time that I've been in the legislature, I've fought to maintain the Dakota Core scholarships. I actually had a bill that was successful in expanding the opportunity scholarships for students. And just last year, when we got done balancing the budget, we took all the money that was left over and we gave it to Medicaid providers and schools. And on top of that, not just K through 12 education, we put money into higher education. And so, you know, DSU was just in the paper last week. They had a $282,000 grant opportunity because of that. They're going to now be able to recruit more research and development companies in and give job opportunities while you're being students as well. It's not necessarily going to alleviate any potential for loans, but it'll help you have some income while you're going to school.
Thank you, Senator Olson. All right, now we get to turn to audience questions. We have 2 wireless mics, so we ask that you raise your hand. And when you have the mic, please make sure that you're speaking directly into it. And these mics will also be used via the broadcast airways from KJAM. And we'd ask that you please identify yourself and briefly state your question. And we'll follow the same format with candidates for answering the questions. So, do we have any audience questions? We're waiting patiently for hands. We have a hand, the gentleman towards the back of the room.
That's the first time I've been called a gentleman, thanks, Bob. I'm kind of known to get on the soapbox once in a while, but you know, an issue that's very important to me, and that's because both my folks were teachers, all my family were teachers, my brothers and sisters, and I have 2 kids that are teachers. But Measure 16 raises some issues, and I don't know if it's even fair to me for me to ask. But how do you stand, you candidates, stand on Measure 16 as far as rewards for teachers or treating all of them as a group or whatever, you know, as far as that law states?
All right, thank you. And that was Commissioner Dan Bowl. And Dan, thank you for the question. We're going to ask each question to respond. They have 1 minute to respond, and we'll start with House candidate Roy Lindsey. Roy?
$16 has a number of things in it. It's not just one bill. It has a number of things in it. One of the things that it has in there is it takes away what they call tenure. South Dakota doesn't have tenure. South Dakota has continuing contract. And what continuing contract means is that after you've been at a district and that for 3 years and you move into your 4th year, if they're not going to have you back for the next year, they have to give you reasonable cause as to why you're not being given a contract for the next year. So If that's the case, and you've been a good teacher for 3 years and that, then you should be given a contract for the next year. If your program's eliminated, or the budget cuts and that reduce your wage, well then that's part of the reason. The other thing it has is a new evaluation tool. It's my understanding that that new evaluation tool is also part of another bill, that even if 16 doesn't pass, it will still go into effect. Then another part of it and that is to give 20% bonuses to those teachers and that are the upper level of the teachers. It pits one teacher against the other. And there's more to it, but I see I have to stop, so thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Next up, we'll hear from Gene Kroger, candidate for the House. And Gene, the question is your feelings on Measure 16 and the philosophy behind it.
Thank you for your question, Dan. It's a good one, you know, and there are people on both sides of the issue. Some love it and some hate it. Actually, it's very similar to a $290 million proposal that the Obama administration just granted money for it that does essentially the same thing. It provides a means of attracting some teachers for some hard-to-fill positions. And while Madison may have every position filled, there are others where they're having trouble attracting teachers, say in math or science or other fields. Almost every segment of society, those who do the outstanding jobs are rewarded the most. And I don't think this should be seen as a threat to teachers. It should be seen as an opportunity.
Thank you, Gene. Next up, we'll hear from Leslie Hindman, candidate for House. Leslie.
Thank you. Difficult question at best. There's 5 segments to that referred law. Most have probably by now read or heard about those particular issues. It'd be difficult for me in 1 minute to tell you exactly how I feel about it. Certainly, the bonus program, in my mind, has been brought up by constituents in this district probably the most. Continuing contracts is an issue as well, but the bonus program. I will acknowledge it's difficult to implement a bonus program. I'm in private business. I can do that, and I can discriminate. I can decide who my best employees are, how I'm going to reward them, and those incentives are there. But I'll acknowledge that it is difficult in a public school system to be able to implement a private business model there. That's one side of the issue that I see is really difficult to deal with.
Thank you, Les. Now we'll switch over to the House or Senate side of things, and Charlie Johnson. And Charlie, as a reminder, the question is your thoughts on Measure 16.
I will vote no on Measure 16. I made that known throughout my campaign and all my campaign literature. Ever since this bill was devised, ever since the governor's address last winter, I challenged any educator to come up to me personally, either in person or by email or phone call or a letter saying that they would support House Bill 1234. It's now 1 week before election. I've yet to have an educator come up to me and say that they support House Bill 1234. So what does that tell you? There's a lot of things wrong with Refer Law 16. I take it back to my farm. I don't cultivate, fertilize, and harvest only 20% of my acres. I take care of all my acres. And that's the way we have to view education. We take care of all of education. And what happens with House Bill 1234, it ends up being a diversion tactic from what we need to be addressing, and that's more adequate funding for education. That's the real problem.
Thank you, Charlie. Next, we'll hear from Senator Russell, candidate for State Senate.
Thanks for the question, Dan. I'm the only one up here that actually serves in the legislature at this current time, so I'm the only one that's voted on this issue, and I voted for it because since the first time I ran back in 2006, I heard at almost every door that I knocked on, that we're not doing enough for education. We're not doing enough for education. And I really did at the time and still do think this is an opportunity for us to pay our great teachers more. This is the first time I've seen a real effort to say we're going to pay our teachers more. And as the amendments that were added onto it, I mean, mine being the final one, I created the Education Reform Advisory Council and got 22 different people from all walks of life, both educators, non-educators, administrators, non-administrators, to tell us what the problems and the best parts of the bill were, so that as we put it in place over the next 2 years, that we have ways to get rid of the things that are bad and way to enhance the things about the bill that we get.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we'll hear from House candidate Scott Parsley. Scott.
Thanks for the question, Dan. I'm married to a teacher. She teaches English. She wouldn't qualify for that 20%. But you know, she's a fine teacher. She's been recognized nationally and internationally for things that she's done. She's been awarded trips all over the world because of her teaching ability. When you build a student, you don't build them just math or just English or just physical education. It's a team effort. The teachers need to work together to get the best out of that student. I find it interesting that a legislator who voted for this bill, in his own words, walked off the floor of the House and saw the governor and said, I voted for your bill, but it's a bad bill. Yet he voted for it. I found that very curious. I oppose this bill. I think it's the wrong approach. We need to bring funding to education, but we need to bring funding to education in a way that encourages our teachers to work together to create and mold students that are well-rounded when they come out of the education system.
Thank you, Scott. Do we have more questions from the audience? We have one in the back of the room. And if you'd please identify yourself and ask a question, sir.
Hi, my name's Roger Reed, and I've been in South Dakota for 43 years, but that's not very long compared to some of you. And my question is regarding Constitutional Amendment M. I would like to hear the candidates' comments about the Constitutional Amendment M dealing with provisions relating to corporations.
All right, thank you, Roger. And for this question, the order that will go in are Gene Kroger, Leslie Hindman, Charlie Johnson, Russell Olson, Scott Parsley, Roy Lindsey. So Gene, if you'd please address Roger's question about Constitutional Amendment M.
Again, this is one of those that people are for and people are against. I'm still considering where I'm standing on that particular one. So I can't really answer your question from my viewpoint. The tendency on constitutional issues, though, is that unless there's a good reason to vote for them, people generally tend to vote against them because they want to stick with what's been done in the past. So we'll see what happens.
All right, thank you, Gene. Next up, we'll hear from Leslie Hindman. Les?
Well, Constitutional Amendment M, regarding certain provisions for the audience, I think some of you may have read up on it or whatever, but regarding certain provisions relating to corporations. And what it allows is to remove restrictions. It allows the legislature to authorize alternative methods of voting in elections for corporate directors, expand the types of contributions a corporation may receive, and establish procedures governing the increase of corporate stock. Certainly, this will allow the corporations to go ahead and determine how much weight their individual directors, their stockholders have. I guess that's going to have to be up to the public to decide whether they think it's good that we allow that. I personally have not taken a stand on it. I do have a corporation, a dental corporation. It's under a little bit different statute in the state.
All right, thank you, Les. Next, we'll hear from the two candidates for state senate, starting with Charlie Johnson.
I really don't have an opinion one way or another, Roger. I guess I'd like to maybe know or hear what your thoughts or concerns are about the measure to weigh in on it. But, again, it's going to be up to the voters of South Dakota to decide on that ballot issue. As other people have mentioned, when it comes to a constitutional amendment, and there's no real clear information or direction on it, a lot of times the no votes tend to take over. And so we'll see in a week from now how that thing turns out. So.
All right, thank you, Charlie. Next up will be State Senator Russ Olson.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Reed. This is another one that I've also had the opportunity to already vote on, and I voted to allow this provision to be put on the ballot. You know, when you have a complex issue like this, it's usually where I would call Mr. Sauer into my office and ask him to explain it to me up here, as I did with Mr. Getzinger and with Mr. Feinstein, who's represented both a Republican and a Democrat, brought the bill forward. And the elevator speech that I was given and that I believe is where the emphasis of the bill came from is that this allows for a more friendly business climate in South Dakota. It gives us one more tool in the toolbox for recruiting corporations to domicile here in our state. The measure was actually on the ballot a few years ago, and almost like it's going to happen to it this year, it got surrounded by other ballot measures. And in South Dakota, if we don't understand something, we vote no, and that's why it failed before. So they've assured us that they were going to get the word out and educate the public as to the benefits of it. I'm not seeing a lot of that.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, we'll go to the House candidates, starting with Scott Parsley.
Thank you, Dr. Reed, for the question, I think. You know, as Russ said, I haven't had the benefit of the elevator speech on this one, but, you know, when you read the explanation, it says that it gives stockholders more control on how the board will be elected. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do agree with the former speakers who have said this issue hasn't had a lot of press, so people don't understand it very well. It is fairly complicated. So usually that means it's probably going to get a no vote, but I don't know. I mean, we'll find out. But again, as you look at a measure like that would allow stockholders to have more voice, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Thanks, Scott. You'll get the elevator speech in about 12 hours. Next up, we'll hear from House candidate Roy Lindsey on Constitutional Amendment M. Roy.
Constitution Amendment M is, in my words, it's a good move forward. We're not at 1889, and to try to run a business the way it was ran in 1889 and operate under the cumulative voting gives the power to the person who can buy the most shares. Well, if you put an Amendment M in, it allows the legislature, it doesn't automatically turn things loose and change things, but it gives the legislature an opportunity to look at rewriting some of the laws dealing with corporations. It also gives shareholders more say in how they want the corporation to be operated. They can go one person, one vote, rather than one person with the most shares has the most say. So right now, we're stuck in one mode. It doesn't give us any opportunities. So it would be nice and give South Dakota an opportunity to move into the 20th century in corporate law.
All right, thanks, Roy. I'll look to Matt from KJAM. Matt, do we have time for one more question? He says go ahead. So, audience, you have an opportunity for one more question. I'm sure afterwards the candidates will be more than happy to stay here, and Dr. Reed, I'd be happy to talk to you about as well. So, yes, young man.
Hello, my name is Jared Sutton. I'm currently a student here at Dakota State University. One question that I kind of was curious just on the candidate's point of view is your issues on being for or against raising the state sales tax.
All right, thank you, Jared. The candidates will go in the following order: Hindman, Johnson, Olson, Parsley, Lindsey, and Kroger. So we'll start off with House candidate Leslie Hindman. Leslie?
A particularly difficult question for me because I have a vested interest in this particular topic. One of the two entities that would receive funding would be Medicaid, and I'm a Medicaid provider. I do understand the healthcare issue, but I also understand the sales tax issue too. What I think, and I mentioned earlier, is what I think is interesting is the people that want this 1-cent sales tax and have proposed it are the ones that have told us before that a sales tax is regressive, in that the poorest people in our communities are the ones that pay the largest share of the dollar for those items. Now that doesn't answer your question about how I support that. I think I'll have to make that individual decision when I go in the voting booth. But those are two issues that I see are difficult to deal with.
All right, thank you, Les. Next up, we'll hear from State Senate candidate Charlie Johnson. Charlie?
Well, this is the third forum that questions came up, and I'll say for the third time that I will support Measure 15. I do so with some reservations and some concerns. We mentioned that it's regressive, and I share the concerns about that. But if it's regressive, then let's get rid of the first 4 cents also. That's the problem. If we're afraid about this money coming back, $180 million, how's it going to be spent? Who's going to decide? Who's going to have the controls on it? We give money back to healthcare providers already. We also turn money back to local school districts with the school aid formula. We don't necessarily express grave concerns as to how they're going to do it. We trust our school administration. We trust our healthcare administration. And if they get that $180 million, I trust that they're going to put it to the very best use they can. I don't like the concept of a sales tax. I've got a proposal called BEEF, Better Education Expects to be Funded. It's a tax on gross revenue, and I think that's a better consideration to better fund education and healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Next up, we'll hear from State Senate candidate Senator Russ Olson. Russ.
Thanks for your question, Mr. Sutton. You know, earlier we were posed a question about, if elected, what we would do to help out Dakota State University. Well, one of the things that this tax increase, it's 25% tax increase, doesn't do is help out Dakota State University. It helps out education, and that's K through 12. It doesn't do a thing for this magnanimous institution that we're sitting in right now today, who arguably needs funding as well. Lots of areas need funding. Roads and bridges, our corrections. To pick two winners that get $180 million indefinitely isn't good tax policy. And that's why I wouldn't have supported this in the legislature as they brought similar measures. If it said, we're going to pay teachers more, we guarantee we're going to pay teachers more, it's a totally different story. There's nothing in this measure that says that teachers will receive $1 more. Madison Central School is going to get, in 2013, about $382,000 more than they're getting right now. They'll get, in 2014, $820,000 more than they're getting right now, and they have nothing in there that says that a teacher will receive $1 more in reimbursement.
Thank you, Senator Olson. Next up, we'll hear from House candidate Scott Parsley. Scott?
Thanks for the question, Jared. You know, this is a difficult issue. We all agree sales tax is regressive, but it is the tax that we have. And quite frankly, we're paying this tax right now anyhow. We cut education and Medicaid by $77 million. Those costs simply get driven down to the local level. And just don't say, well, I'm not a property owner, so that doesn't affect me because I don't pay property taxes. Yes, you do. You pay it in your rent, Private pays in the nursing home pay more because we cut Medicaid. So those dollars have to come from someplace. And that, right now, those dollars are coming from property tax and from private pay, individuals in nursing homes. Or folks like Dr. Hindman are just having to charge less, because that's the other answer. So, is this an easy issue? No. Will I support this issue? Probably. Because we have to fill these holes. We have to fill these holes that we've dug in support for education and support for Medicaid. Yes, they only go to two places, because those were the two places that were assaulted in budget cuts.
Thanks, Scott. Next, we'll hear from House candidate Roy Lindsey. Roy?
It's been said that this is the highest increase in the sales tax in South Dakota history. That's not true. The highest increase occurred when we gave cities 2% and an additional third 1%. So we've already allowed the state of South Dakota to give favoritism to cities and increase the state sales tax by 75%. Now, what does it mean? Well, this didn't come from the legislature. This came from the public because of their upset in the ways that the legislature hasn't been funding education, hasn't been funding Medicaid. And they've reduced the dollars at the state level since 2008. Yes, they give an increase, but it was a decrease in the original decrease. And then we got another decrease in the original decrease. And so that's where we're at. So what we need to do is figure out what we're going to do. We're either going to fund it with the current dollars that we have available by changing priorities, or if the public is in favor of the 1%, I can still remember when local control was what people relied on.
Thank you, Roy. And finally, we'll hear from candidate Gene Kroger. Gene?
Thank you, Bob. Does that mean I get the last word? Okay. You know, this is a difficult issue to deal with. And it's being dealt with by bringing it to the public. And the public will determine whether or not they want to increase their taxes. If they want to pay more taxes, they'll pass it. If they don't, they won't pass it. And if it doesn't pass, then we still have to find ways to deal with the issue, because the issue isn't going away. You know, you don't hear any talk about inflation these days, or very much, but 4 years ago, gasoline was $1.89 a gallon. Today it's $3.39. Every time I go to the grocery store, groceries go up. 3 cans of pork and beans are now on sale for $2. I remember not too long ago they were on sale, 3 cans for $1. You know, a 75-cent can of soup now costs $1.25. So we're already paying more in all walks of life.
All right, thanks, Gene. Now we will go to final comments. Each candidate will have 1 minute to summarize their candidacy. We will go in reverse order from the opening statements for each slot. So we will begin with the House candidates, Leslie Hindman, followed by Gene Kroger, Roy Lindsey, and Scott Parsley, and then the Senate candidates, Russell Olson, Charlie Johnson, and Charlie Johnson. So first up will be House candidate Leslie Hindman.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to come before you in this forum, this format, to be able to express our views. I believe I have experience, not only in healthcare, but in Medicaid, a broad background in farming, rural issues. I think we need to provide opportunities, jobs for our children. Those that choose to stay would want to stay here in the state, like my daughter. She came back after going out of state to dental school and joined me in dental practice a year ago. I'm elated that she is able to find job opportunities here. I'll be a strong voice for you out in Pierre to provide those opportunities. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I look forward to working with you next week.
Thanks, Les. Next up, we'll hear from candidate Gene Kroger. Gene?
I'm delighted to be a candidate for the legislature. I'm not running against anyone. I'm running for the people of District 8 and for the people of South Dakota. I have had a broad life experience, worked with all kinds of people, worked together to solve problems. Because interestingly enough, as long as we've been around, we still haven't solved all of our problems. And we won't solve them all, but we have to work together to be able to do that. And I have a little bit of experience in working with people and learning to disagree without being disagreeable. Thank you.
Thanks, Gene. Next up, we'll hear from House candidate Roy Lindsey. Roy.
Thank you. I'm excited for the opportunity to represent District 8. I think I can bring some common sense and work across the aisle with my business experience and years of teaching behind me. I've had the opportunity to both teach students to be employable and also, as an employer, have employees and work with them in training and with issues that face them. You know, either finding a job and working for me or working for someone else. So it's a great opportunity. I'm excited for it, and I would really appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. Next up, we'll hear from House candidate Scott Parsley. Scott.
Thanks, Bob. And again, thank you all for coming tonight, and those listening on the radio, thank you for taking the time to listen to this candidates forum, because the more informed you are, hopefully the better voters you are, and the better state that we have. And I started out by saying we have a great state, and we do. I love South Dakota. I've lived here all my life, our 6 years that we lived in Iowa, and we came back because we like South Dakota. We have some issues in front of us right now. We have to improve our education system in this state. That's the foundation for strong economic development. And we have to make that improvement. We have to take care of our elderly, and we have to work on our economic development. I believe I've had a lot of experience in economic development, particularly in the job that I do at East River Electric. I've served on the American Coalition for Ethanol Board since 1987. I also serve on the Dakota Risings Board, which is one of the premier economic development groups in South Dakota. So I think I'm qualified for this job. I'm very interested in doing this job, and I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott. So those were the candidates for the House. Now we'll hear from the Senate candidates. Senator Russell Olson, followed by Charlie Johnson. Senator Olson.
Thanks, Bob. Ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard tonight, there's a lot of difficult issues facing our state. This has been an hour's worth. This is half of one committee meeting. We have 3 months worth of these while we're in here. I've spent the last 6 years working with on behalf of the constituents that I have here in District 8. I'm a Republican, and I'm very proud of that fact. But I'm even more proud of the fact that the most important constituent issues for me, and the bills that I've carried on behalf of my constituents, I carried on behalf of Democrats and Independents. I serve all the residents of District 8, not just my fellow Republicans. I really, truly take this job seriously. I hope to continue to serve you in District 8 and the Senate in years to come, and I'd appreciate your vote on November 6th.
Thank you, Senator Olson. And finally, we'll hear from Senate candidate Charlie Johnson. Charlie.
Thank you, excuse me, thank you, Bob, KGM Radio, for having us on the airwaves tonight, and the audience here in this room for your time to come here and listen to the issues. You know, we're 1 week away from election, but I think we've already have winners here in the room and in the residents of District 8. You have a full slate of candidates that you can choose from. very well qualified candidates. Not every district in the state has that luxury, and I think we congratulate ourselves here in District 8 that we do have a full slate of candidates, and you as the residents of District 8 are winners for that. I like South Dakota so much that my claim to fame is I moved a half mile down the road from where I was born and raised. And so I enjoy South Dakota and I take pride in it. But I also know that our #1 resource is the land itself and the bright young minds that live upon it. And how we steward that land and educate our youth will tell us quite well how we're going to succeed in the future. And my priority from here on out as a candidate and hopefully someday as a legislator will be a priority on education. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. To each of the candidates, we thank you for your participation in this forum. We wish you well in the upcoming election. Your willingness to seek office for a District 8 seat in the South Dakota State Legislature is greatly appreciated. Thank you. We thank the audience who came here to DSU to participate. And we thank the radio listeners, and thanks again to KJAM for broadcasting this event. For those of you here in the room, the candidates will be available to talk to you and answer your questions individually. Thank you.